Debt, the most profitable product in human history. Imagine a product so powerful that it creates money without creating anything tangible. So mysterious that most people buy it every single day without realizing it. That product is debt. And debt is anything but a neutral financial tool. It was deliberately designed to be the most profitable product in human history. It organized wars, destroyed empires, stripped nations of their independence, and silently erased the wealth of ordinary people. Yet if you ask most people where debt comes from, who creates it, or why it dominates our financial system, they wouldn't know. Because the history of debt isn't just economic, it's the history of money and power. Debt, a promise and a trap. At its simplest, debt is hope. You borrow today, you'll fix it tomorrow. But inside that hope lies the foundation of financial control, interest. Interest turns the future into profit. For thousands of years, humanity has struggled with that idea. Ancient Mesopotamians recorded debts on clay tablets, but they also practiced periodic debt forgiveness. Elites knew one simple truth. If too many citizens are buried under debt, the system collapses. The Hebrew Bible even mentions debt jubilees every 50 years. The logic was clear. Debt brings danger. If left unchecked, it can crush entire societies. But over time, the elites learned something powerful. Don't destroy debt, weaponize it. The Middle Ages and the bypass of usury laws. In medieval Europe, the Catholic Church officially banned lending at interest. Usury was a sin. But merchants and bankers found ways around it. They disguised loans as trade contracts or created complex financial structures to hide interest payments. During the Renaissance, the powerful Medici family of Florence built empires not with armies or land, but through lending. They financed kings, popes, and merchants, and in return gained not just money, but political leverage. Debt was no longer a financial tool, it had become an instrument of power. The birth of national debt. The real transformation came in the 17th century with public debt. The Dutch Republic, fighting for independence from Spain, sold government bonds to its own citizens. Investors bought these bonds, received interest, and traded them as if they were property. Wars were no longer limited by a king's gold or silver. The future itself could now be sold and financed forever. The Dutch perfected this model. Soon after, England followed the same path. In 1694, the Bank of England was born, turning national debt into a permanent institution. The government no longer borrowed from individuals, but from a central bank, which issued banknotes in return. For the first time, a state could live in permanent debt, not just in crisis, but always. Bankers became indispensable partners of the crown. Debt was no longer private, it became the foundation of state power. The infinite profit cycle. The profits were immense. Lending to governments became the safest investment on earth because governments could always collect taxes to repay. Wars that once bankrupted kings could now be financed forever. And those wars expanded empires, opened new markets, and created even more debt opportunities. A perfect cycle. The more wars, the more debt. The more debt, the richer the creditors. By the 19th century, the bond markets of London, Paris, and Amsterdam were the beating heart of global finance. Armies marched, ships sailed, colonies fell, all powered by debt. The Industrial Revolution, debt for the people. It was no longer just states. As industrial capitalism spread, ordinary people became part of the same cycle. Railways, factories, infrastructure, all were built on credit. Workers earned wages from debt-financed companies, then borrowed again to buy homes, cars, and goods. Debt threads wove through every layer of economic life. By the 20th century, debt was no longer the privilege of the rich. or reform. Debt went beyond profit. It became political leverage. The modern consumer. Debt as a lifestyle. At the same time, a quieter revolution took place. Banks discovered they could sell debt directly to households. The mortgage became the middle-class dream. Home ownership was no longer for elites, but the price was a 30-year financial chain. Car loans, furniture payments, credit cards, debt became a consumer product. Buy now, pay later. Live today, forget tomorrow. For banks, it was a gold mine. Millions of households making monthly interest payments, a stable, compounding profit stream. The endless expansion of debt. The danger was clear. The system became addicted to growth. Banks didn't want loans repaid early, they wanted them refinanced, extended, multiplied. Governments preferred borrowing over taxation. Politicians promised prosperity today and passed the bill to the next generation. Central banks printed money to keep the wheels spinning. Debt wasn't a temporary tool anymore, it was the architecture of the system. The 1980s and the global debt crisis. In the 1970s and 80s, developing nations drowned in debt. After the oil shocks, Western banks flooded them with credit. Then U.S. Fed Chair Paul Volcker raised interest rates sharply, and those countries could no longer pay. In 1982, Mexico defaulted. The solution? More debt, but this time under far harsher IMF supervision. Nations borrowed to survive, borrowed again to repay, and lost sovereignty with every round. The people faced austerity, unemployment, inflation. The elites and creditors kept winning. Financialization and the 2008 collapse. In the developed world, finance made a new discovery. Debt itself could be sold. Mortgages, car loans, corporate bonds, bundled, securitized, and sold to global investors. Debt was no longer a promise between two parties, it was a commodity. Wall Street stopped producing goods and started producing debt. The 2008 financial collapse was the logical outcome. Trillions in mortgage-backed securities imploded. Who was saved? The banks. Families lost homes, jobs, and savings, but the debt merchants were rescued. And ironically, the system grew even larger afterward. Today, the peak of debt. Global debt now exceeds $300 trillion, 3 times the size of the world economy. Never in human history has so much been owed to so few. And the irony? This mountain of debt is celebrated as growth. Politicians brag about rising GDP, knowing most of it is borrowed from the future. Debt is so normalized that no one questions it anymore. A 20-year-old signs tens of thousands in student loans, and it's called an investment in your future. A couple takes a 30-year mortgage, and it's called the dream. Governments run deficits every year, and no one notices. Because the cost is paid through an invisible tax. Inflation. Inflation makes repayment possible and maintains the illusion of prosperity built on leverage. Debt, the engine of inequality. Every interest payment is a transfer of wealth, upward. Over time, it reshapes society. Those with assets borrow cheaply and buy more, multiplying their wealth through leverage. Those without assets borrow expensively and stay trapped. Debt is the bright legal mirror of class division. The digital age, a new debt order. Now central banks are exploring digital currencies, coded, trackable, programmable money. A world where algorithms approve your credit, interest rates shift instantly, and penalties apply automatically. To many, it sounds like efficiency, but history teaches one lesson. Efficiency for the creditor is loss